Well, Carl, thanks very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
And congratulations on winning the inaugural Australian Growth Company Award. I was hoping today you could start by just telling us a bit more about your business and how it's going.
Yeah, sure. We're effectively an online retailer. Internally, we define ourselves as a sort of flash model where customers effectively sign up to the website, they become a member, and we send emails. We're one of those culprits for sending lots and lots of emails out. But the consumers like the content, so it works for everybody. Structurally, we're a B2B model, working with brands to dispose of excess inventory, and from a consumer's perspective as a B2C model, we're there to just bring great value and great product in an online pure play fashion.
And what were the secrets of your exceptional growth over the last few years?
Look, I mean, historically, we've followed trends that have come out of the UK and US as far as this model. And this is a sophisticated channel of distribution in those markets. When we arrived here, my brother founded the business back in 2007-8. It was a starting point of a structural shift that was going on in the retail world. Since then, we've just been brutally focused on one objective. We haven't been distracted. We've been tempted to try lots and lots of things, and lots of people around us have said, do things. And by default almost of being too busy and within the moment, we've ended up being really, really focused on an online fashion apparel discount model. And then we sort of coupled that with the consumer traction that sort of got what we were doing, and whether that's the structural shift that's going on in the retail landscape, prices relatively high, service and range of product, and they just got it. So we ended up just working very, very hard on a pure play online sort of off-price model. So
being at the helm of a company that's grown quite dramatically since 2007 with multiple jurisdictions, lots of staff, what have been some of the key challenges of managing that growth?
When we started the journey, the initial challenge was around funding. So we sort of tackled that by going out and finding a private equity partner and putting some cash onto the balance sheet and allowing us to have the headroom and make the right long-term strategic decisions. So we got through that. Then the second real phase was all around scaling it quick enough to keep ahead of the curve. So we'd build warehouses, we'd remove warehouses, and suddenly would outgrow them. So there was another phase. And then we got to a tipping point a couple of years ago, no, 3 years ago, where we said, actually, we've got to now plan for some really serious growth, some big numbers. We're confident in the model, so let's make those levels of investment now that will see us through a significant period of time. So that constant challenge of investing to grow, not investing hard enough, and outgrowing it was really frustrating. And then in parallel, there's this sort of onboarding great people ahead of the curve to do what you're doing without sort of being sort of having all the oxygen sucked out of you working 24/7.
And what would you say your leadership style is? Are you focused purely on profit, on staff, on the customer? What's your leadership style?
We've got a PE partner, so I think fundamentally we're very, very focused around our shareholders and maximising value for our shareholders. We're also in a very high growth industry and a new industry. We're recruiting people who have never worked in this sector before. So we've got a perspective of we can't go out and recruit this talent because they actually don't exist because they've not had the experience in this channel of distribution. So we've looked overseas for those people and brought them in and got people to learn off them. But we've got this position now where whereas before we had to be sort of really focused and really intense with the team that we had and working very closely, because our systems and structure and processes weren't robust as we were growing so quickly. You've now got this really confident team that has got enough experience to manage and run the business. Still a relatively new team, but a team that understands the model, is absolutely fully committed to the sort of journey we've started, and gives us real confidence that they are for the future of what we're trying to do.
With your executive team and the key people in that team, how have you kept them focused and how have you kept them motivated?
The first piece is all around the incentivization with regards to a long-term incentive program we get. So we've got our key people hooked into the business based on the same KPIs that the shareholders have got, and we're all fully aligned. The second bit is they're actually in a real sweet spot around what they've done, what they've created, and the moment going forward is really for them now. So to think 4 or 5 years ago the business didn't exist to the scale that it is, and these guys have been instrumental in delivering it, is a real credit to them, and they're absolutely sort of aligned up for the future.
So one interesting challenge must be, staying ahead of that curve. There'll be people mimicking what you're trying to do and trying to overtake you. How have you created a culture where innovation can survive?
Well, we've sort of built quite a defensive wall around the business from an infrastructure perspective, that sort of says, actually, this is now really difficult for a competitor to get into it. Whether that's our sort of scale, our first mover advantage, but there's some real barriers now to get into the space we're sort of dominating. And then the second piece is, and I often quote this, we often looked at the UK and the US around global players leading and doing what they're doing. We're now looking into sort of China and seeing what guys are doing over there, and into some of Asia. So our innovation, we're not huge innovators. We will look, we'll replicate it, and then we'll execute. So we're seeing trends in other markets now that are leading what were the sort of the traditional leaders in that space. So and China's a great example. They copy what's going on in other more mature markets, and they've executed much quicker, they've executed quicker and with much more focus. And I've done a better job, I have to say.
There seems to be a myth that to be the CEO of a high growth company, you and your team need to be working till 3 a.m, on a diet of Red Bull and pizza. What's your view on that work-life balance, and how have you managed that issue?
Well, we're not very good at it. I think that's the sort of first thing. And it's back to, we're an online business. We trade in 6 countries. Asia's part of that. We've got supply and distribution in the UK and the US. So we have got a really broad reach. We've got a tech team in Russia. So generally the guys are around 24/7. So there's a stretch around what you're doing around running the sort of core functions within the business. I think, and then there was this pressure of the team was very new, and it was really building and growing, and had to be supported by myself, and more importantly by the leadership team. Going forward, we're now starting to recruit a really senior exec team that can support the existing exec team and leadership team, and really is allowing us to have a bit more of a balance, albeit relative. And coupled with that, our sort of systems and our processes are much more robust. So you've got this bit of great people have joined you and been through the journey, and now really, really confident and sophisticated what you're doing. Adding new talent in, which is sort of taking us to the next stage, coupled with much stronger reporting processes and internal controls. And at that point, you can start to relax. And in parallel, our performance is really strong. So we've got this sort of confidence bit of the business that we can keep thinking about other things and not worry intensely about the sort of day-to-day stuff.
And you mentioned before that you took private equity investment into the company. What are the sort of the pros and cons of dealing with a professional investor?
Well, we've got a great partner. They're Insight Venture Partners, who came around. Seeded. Start again. We've got a great partner, a US firm, Insight Venture Partners. I think for me, the fact I've worked with private equity and I've been in these sort of high growth pieces before, you sort of knew what you were letting yourself in for. And I think the deal structure that we've got, the minority shareholding that they sit with, and their references on their other investments and their portfolio was a really important decision that we went through. They've added great value in the technology piece for us, and they'd already invested in some global shopping clubs in the US and UK. So we were learning off those more developed players. And you get back to this point of we had to scale our business for growth, and we needed investment on the balance sheet, and we needed partners who were like-minded to support us in that journey. And you know, we've got no regrets and no looking back with what those guys have you know, supported us with. And also they're very passive in our relationship. Structurally, we have reporting and processes to follow, but I have a really good relationship and dialogue with them. Yeah, it's good. It worked well.
And the final question, I guess, is what does the future hold for the company?
Strategically, our focus is absolutely on Southeast Asia. So we are working in a population of 20 odd million people, and we've got a great business that's growing strongly. We're now trading in 4 markets in Southeast Asia. That will be 6 in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And our strategy is to replicate this model in those new emerging markets. We don't want to go into China. China for us is a B2B solution. Our B2C model is into those into that ASEAN market and trying to replicate it. And each one is a challenge, but the prize is absolutely enormous when we start to knock those businesses off. And we've been in Singapore for 4 years, so we've got good experience of Asia. We've now got to get into those bigger markets and scale them. And as I said, the sort of customer dynamics, the customer metrics are showing really encouraging signs that this model can migrate, can be translated, and the consumer will get it.
Well, thanks very much for coming in today.
Pleasure.
Are there any final words of wisdom you'd like to pass on?
Look, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of opportunities, and I think if you find that model, you can see it working in other markets, then go for it. You know, but have the determination, the focus, and don't look back, because there's some big changes going on out there, and I think if you can be pioneering and innovative as well as really focused, you can nail it. So that's my piece.